name's Emma Dodgson. I currently chair the Human Aspects Group of the Emergency Planning Society. I took over the chair from Peter last year, and Peter did an absolutely fabulous job for so many years. And then our vice chair is Livy, who will be hosting our second session tomorrow. So this afternoon and in the morning, we'll be talking about the human aspects of emergencies, and that's the wide range of people issues, such as social and psychological impacts of trauma, loss and bereavement, responder welfare, vulnerabilities, safe places and spaces, volunteering, and psychological first aid, to name but a few. It's a huge area. But overall, if I can summarise, it's the compassion and humanity and being people-focused in everything we do. And it's also about us. So if you turn it around, it's aspects of being human in emergency planning. And being human is to experience in life in all its colours and potential and being both fragile and strong. And I can certainly relate to that as an emergency planner. So emergency planning is emotional work, and not just the situations we respond to and plan for, but the role we play as well. And I wonder if some of these examples will resonate with you. The dopamine rush, when a plan that we've been working on for so long and so hard is finally signed off with maybe some good feedback. And then when it's actually used and not shelved. That warm feeling of connectedness when collaborating with like-minded people, some considered old friends. The butterflies when we deliver training or advice to our leaders. The fire in our belly when championing something that we feel really passionate about. And that gut wrench and sense of doom when we see a risk is becoming more and more likely and thinking about the dreadful impacts that that's going to have. The cortisol and busy brain when we try to get rid of after a busy and long shift, trying to go to sleep so that we can wake up and do it all again in the morning. And welfare of responders has been mentioned today. And the surge of adrenaline and tummy flops when the duty phone goes off in the middle of the night or when standing up presenting to a large conference. So emergency planning can be seen as doom-mongering, but it's certainly never dull, and it's certainly a career that makes you feel. And I could totally pick up on Paul Fitzwilliam's excitement earlier today. It was quite infectious. No day is ever the same, and I was thinking, could our roles be replaced by artificial intelligence? It's very timely at the moment to think about that. Can we take the human out of it? So in this session, we're going to be talking about what human aspects means to us, why we're part of the Human Aspects Group and the work we champion. And we'll be talking about current things that affect us personally, our roles, our jobs, our organisations, and also our profession. And some things are taking its toll, so it's certainly very timely. We're going to hear a real positive here in our top 10 human aspects principles, and that's the ingredients of human aspects done right. And then I'll tell you what hopefully will inspire you with our session tomorrow morning. Now, when talking about and hearing about human aspects of emergencies, some of the things you may hear may trigger something within you that feels hard to deal with. And if you find this happening, do feel you can reach out, and us in the group are always available if you want to talk. So Major General Timothy Hidgetts told you a story. I'm going to tell you a story as well, but mine's not quite so exciting. So once upon a time, one summer in 1989, a 14-year-old girl went to the Vendée area of France with her family and best friend for a camping holiday. And on a warm sunny day, a week into the fortnight break, they were out for a day trip to see a chateau. And something awful happened on the long journey there. Her dad forgot for a moment that he was in France and to look left instead of right when joining a dual carriageway. And the result was a nasty and painful collision between their small light blue Escort and a big lorry. That 14-year-old girl thankfully had a mum who responded very quickly, which did prevent a fatal collision. But there were injuries of all involved, and one was hospitalised for several days. But what's rarely thought about is that write-off car, the ruined picnic, the possessions lost forever in the mangled wreckage. Hours spent doing mixtapes for the holiday, wasted. The fast blue light ambulance ride, the injuries, the blood, the noise. But what is remembered and have now become family anecdotes is the support from unusual places and people. There was a doctor who took the time to draw pictures to help communicate the injuries because there was no one in the hospital to translate. It was the early hours of the morning, and an A&E nurse, after a very busy shift, piled 3 of the survivors into a little Citroen car to drive them to a nun's retreat because there was no hotels available and no taxis. The nuns took the family in with lots of compassion, concern, unlimited amounts of bread and jam, un mauvais souvenir and mal à la tête. The young holiday rep left a little bouquet of fresh flowers in a vase in the tent for when the family returned. And an English teacher reached out and commented kindly on the injured face of the 14-year-old and made sure she was okay on the return to school. Also, a remarkable thing happened. The 40-something-year-old mum started speaking some fluent French after never speaking it before, and that had been 25 years before. The brain is a remarkable thing. Also, unfortunately remembered are the things that happened after the crash that did make the situation worse, but interestingly, those are overshadowed by the kindness. I still have those physical cut scars from that car crash, and there's one that shows on my forehead when I'm tired and stressed, which is all the time because I've got teenage girls. And is this why I became an emergency planner? Probably not. I actually fell into it by accident. But that personal experience has stayed with me, and it's resonated with the work I do and the things I hear. Because at a formative age, I saw how kindness and humanity can really make a difference in a crisis. And I think to myself, what if none of that had happened? What if I hadn't got any sleep? What if I hadn't got any food? What if I'd had no help and no experiences of kindness, no support when I went back to school? And I know that's a personal crisis, but I think there's relevance there in major incidents. And I think of the roles that the teacher, the holiday rep, the doctors, the nurses, the multi-faith community, and we talked about whole society earlier today. Sometimes small things can make a big difference. So compassion and support offers humanity and hope, and human aspects is also having on the radar what can be done that can cause more harm after the emergency and then avoiding it as much as possible. Things that are just unnecessary, how people are treated. Actions, words and attitudes based on beliefs and assumptions that, whilst unintentional, can delay or even damage someone's recovery. And a people-focused approach can be lost in a drive for efficiency, a drive for speed or saving money, and data-driven process and policy. And we all know what these events and systems and processes are. What's triumphed as sometimes convenient or cost-effective may not be best for the human aspects. So have a think about what your red flags are when you think an approach being taken in your area of work is process-focused rather than people-focused. And if you get the chance, share them on your table or come and talk to us at the stand tomorrow. So sometimes an increased need for process can sometimes be a symptom of lack of capacity. And that can be in an organisation or service. So sometimes it can replace people that would otherwise be doing the coordinating or the responding or the planning. So stripping back to minimal standards because of necessity means that human aspects is harder to do in a small crisis, let alone an emergency. Now, an influential police family liaison officer who I worked with on national advice and national guidance a few years ago said, when talking about supporting people affected by emergencies, and this is what he said: at the very worst time of their lives, the very least we can do is at our very best. And I'm grateful to him because that has stayed my mantra. And I know it's many emergency planners' mantras from that time. Maybe some people remember it in this room. So I champion human aspects, and we all do. We all aspire for good practice and the gold standard so that we can achieve our very best. But then as a practitioner and working for a public service, I'm also a realist. And I know it's balanced with limited resources and the priorities and ideologies of those in charge of those limited resources. So human aspects can be championed to influence change for the better. And my colleagues, we've all seen human aspects done really well, some really good examples. So again, come and talk to us at the stand and find out what they are. So the book, Collective Conviction. Got a copy. Has anyone read it in the room? Don't know, see hands up, I can see. Okay. It's a really important book, really recommend it. And I've had the privilege of working and knowing with several people whose personal accounts are in that book. I've spent days with people in that book, on residential workshops at the Warrington Peace Centre, Bramshill Police Training College, our Human Aspects annual conferences, the Emergency Planning College, and doing local work. Rich, inspiring experiences. And they've stayed with me. And when I'm at meetings and one-to-ones, tactical coordinating groups and strategic coordinating groups, I imagine people that I've got to know in this book, survivors and bereaved and responders. And I look at the organisations represented at the table or not represented, the leadership, the language used, the decisions made or not deferred, the advice being given or not even sought. And I questioned myself, what would they think? And I'm pleased to say in a recent meeting I had at my own organisation recently with some local authority social care directors, I thought that, and I did feel incredible pride because it was one of the most people-focused meetings I'd been to in a long time. And that book and those rich experiences and my reflections of what would they think keeps me people-focused, with compassion and humanity at the forefront, and that's what the human aspects means to me. So I'll speak again, but first you're going to hear from others about what human aspects means to them. So we'll first hear from Nathan, then Julie, then Peter, and then Libby.
There we go. We've managed the move around a stage without falling over. So human aspects to me, just to give you a bit of an intro, I'm an NHS emergency planner, but previously local government, and in 3 weeks' time, again, local government, as I head back. Human aspects to me is remembering that in an incident, we're not dealing with numbers, we're dealing with people. And that we are dealing with a series of individuals for whom this could be the worst day of their life. We are there as emergency planners, both in our planning and our response, to make sure that on that person's worst possible day, someone can turn up and go, we're really sorry that this has happened. Here's what we can do to help. Because if we don't do that, if we just turn up and assume that everyone's okay, or we push them into a rest centre that's not necessarily appropriate, or we just fob them off and go, I'm really sorry, but make your own arrangements. That's what that person will remember. Not the incident itself, but the appalling attitude of those that have gone to respond. Whereas if we do well, if we turn up and help those individuals, take the time to have a discussion, make them a cup of tea, make sure that they're booked into a nicer of two hotels, if any of you have purchase cards, that's what they'll remember. That actually, at that worst possible moment, somebody came. And somebody came over, ignored the excitement of the blue flashing lights, and didn't go and speak to the fire officer first, but spoke to the people that had been evacuated, introduced themselves, and helped them. Who was next? Julie, there you go.
Practice this, did we? Okay, what does human aspects mean to me, and why am I a very proud member of this group? Well, in April 1985, a lot of you weren't even born then, but I was 26, and that's when I started my career in emergency planning. On Saturday, the 11th of May, and I'm reading this because I do not want to get the dates and the numbers wrong. Saturday, the 11th of May, 1985, the Bradford City Stadium fire took place on Lifetime TV, and I was watching it. It killed 56 spectators and injured at least 265 more. On the 6th of March, 1987, the MS Herald of Free Enterprise capsized in Zeebrugge, killing 193 passengers and crew. On the 20th of March that same year, 1987, my dad, a keen sailor and sea lover, died. He was very upset. Seeing the images from the Herald of Free Enterprise, it really resonated, being such a keen sailor. On the 6th of July 1988, Piper Alpha exploded and killed 167. On the 21st of December 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over the small Scottish town of Lockerbie, killing 270 people. On the 3rd of January 1989, Kegworth air disaster killed 47 people and left another 74 with serious injuries. On the 15th of April 1989, Hillsborough football disaster, where 94 people died. Another person died a few days later, another 4 years later, and Andrew Devine, 32 years later. On the 20th of August, 1989, Marchioness pleasure boat collided with a dredger and 51 people lost their lives. In 1991, Disaster Action was founded as a charity by survivors and bereaved people from many of those incidents, from UK and overseas. And it's been my absolute privilege to have met, like Emma, a number of these people and listened to their personal experiences and read Collective Conviction. Pamela Dix, who was a founder member and executive director of Disaster Action, was one of the first people I met and asked to deliver a presentation at a conference. Her brother Peter was killed in Lockerbie. And Dr. Anne Eyre, Hillsborough survivor, and again a founder member of Disaster Action. I challenge anyone not to have been inspired to do as much as they possibly could to ensure that the lessons that have been identified from theirs and subsequent, I'm just talking here of the late 1980s, to ensure that the lessons identified from their personal experiences that they freely share with us are learned, and I want to use whatever professional opportunity I can to make sure that their experiences haven't been in vain. And that is why I'm a member. Thank you.
You may have noticed from my badge, unlike most of the other people, I've got a title, and it's also in the bio that I am, in fact, a clergyman. And one of the privileges is to share with people's pleasures and joys, like weddings and baptisms, but also to sit with people in their pain. Because it's sharing their pain and giving them strength and courage, even though it costs us a great deal. I joined the Human Aspects Group of the Emergency Planning Society before I became a member of the EPS, and that was my route into the society. And one of the things in our terms of reference is that we are passionate, and that is a very emotive word, passionate about the human aspects in emergencies. Because we believe that it is fundamental in all aspects of resilience, emergency planning, and so on, from the very beginning to the end. Many of us may have been at exercises where, as an afterthought, something was added about looking after the people. It should never be that. It should be at the very beginning, in the planning, the exercising, and the post-management. It is the people that matter above everything else. And when Judy makes her presentation about the 10 aspects of emergency management, do pay close attention to that, because it should be engraved on every agenda of every SCG and meeting. At the very beginning, what are we going to do with and for the people? But it's not about the victims, it's about everybody involved. You've heard from my colleagues their experiences and how it has been personal to them, and they have shared the burden of other people suffering. So it's not just about those involved. It's about everybody involved. From the first responders, the people involved in the incident, the communities. Human aspects should be at the very heart of everything that we do.
Thank you. I feel like a little bit, someone said earlier, follow that, but I'll try. And this is a little bit about how I became a member of the Human Aspects Group. So I actually came from the district council. I worked in the district council, and we were, you know, do you want to help in a helpline? Yeah, put my name up. I'll do that. Let me have a look at that. I was absolutely taken aback. I just thought I wanted to do more about. There was a scenario, and it just really fueled me as a young girl in local authority at the time. I actually was really passionate about helping people as well. And then we had an opportunity, and one of the opportunities was for me to actually go to the Emergency Planning College. And if that wasn't enough, because when it was run by the Home Office back in 1989 when I went, 1989, sorry, 1999, when I was going to say, a bit younger there, 1999, it was fabulous. And knock on the door in the morning, have your cup of tea by David. It was wonderful. So if that was not enough, but one of the first courses I went on was how to handle the media in a disaster. And one of the talks was actually as Hillsborough. And as a young girl who was sat in a car listening to that unfold on the radio, as it happened, because I was sat in the car with my husband at the time, and then we were listening to that as it just unfolded, and it really resonated. And a couple of things that I mentioned about that, the talk that they did, was about talking about Amanda Coleman and the communication. And one of the things they said was about, they produced a leaflet, and it was, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And it was actually somebody who pointed out to them that it was through a tunnel that they went, and some sadly lost their lives. And there was another one as well, another story about somebody, was a member of the social care team who was desperately trying to track down a wedding ring for someone. And I was actually hooked. It was about that human interest and the human story. I actually, went from district in 1998. Sorry, I can't get it. 1998 through the flooding, and then sort of became an emergency planning professional back then. And it's actually flooding where I want to end now as well, because I joined the Human Aspects Group. It was really important to me. I joined back then. I took a little bit of time away, trials and tribulations, and very sadly some trauma and a bit of tragedy thrown in as well, which I won't go into any details now. But it brought me back to the group again, and I'm very passionate about being alongside colleagues here today. So one of the things I want to say about flooding and the communications and that we say about how people are involved and how it impacts people. So we often hear a lot, I hear it a lot at the moment, you live near a river. What do you expect? Well, some people who live near a river have lived near a river and haven't flooded for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. It was mentioned before, frequency, intensity, it's happening more. We have got people who are flooding, they don't live near a river anymore, they must feel as though they live in the river. I mean, we've got people who have flooded 9 times within a 3-year period and haven't even gone back to their homes following the first time. So, you know, what kind of impact is that having? And actually it's about, you know, we've all had those disasters that we've heard about over the years as well, and some seem acceptable. Oh well, it's just them. Well, actually, no, it's that human. I mean, I remember the Marchioness being an absolute total one for that, with regards to it was almost seen as though, well, they were, you know, young and having fun, so what was the matter? Absolutely ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. So it's about bringing that sort of element back as well. And apologies if that, you know, brings anything back for anybody there as well. But it just shows that we don't listen to that. We absolutely understand the needing for everybody to be treated, not the same, but as individuals. And I think that's where I'll end for now. Thank you, Emma. Oh, sorry, the only one thing I was just going to say as well about the rain is I can't imagine at the moment, and especially because we're having so much of it, if you're flooding, all of that rain that's coming daily, how must that impact ourselves and the individuals that have flooded again and again?
So you've heard from some of our Human Aspects Group members. They're a wonderful group to be part of. And hands up, other hags in the room. Okay, have a look around you. We've tried to get as many involved in this conference as we can, and do get in touch with us if you ever need to know anything Human Aspects-y. And we're interested in what human aspects means to you as well. It can mean different things to different people, and we love to hear and work on different perspectives. So do use the post-it notes and put it on the board at the back. So I spent many years thinking of people in emergencies as those at the wrong place at the wrong time, but now it's as if we're all vulnerable to emergencies with COVID, RAC, climate change, conflict. I now feel like I'm writing plans for me and my family. I'd like to hand over to Nathan, who's going to talk about our current situation.
I apologise. This is now where I'll reiterate a lot of the incidents you'll probably all be dealing with, so I'll probably start depressing the room. Incidents with a human aspect. It's pretty much everything. The most up to date, anyone that covers the southeast of England, the county of Surrey is still in a major incident. And I say this as somebody that covers the Surrey area. I have had to take calls today in that we've had a water outage. Now, that water outage initially was only impacting a small number of homes. It's now impacting approximately 40,000 people. It has impacted an acute hospital, a mental health hospital, care homes, community hospitals. The cumulative impact of just one outage that will result in significant work going on. And I will add a thank you to DLUC and the Cobra unit for supporting us during that incident, including the blue light run for the water tankers to go to a hospital. It's definitely an exciting thing to ask for. But equally, there are lots of incidents that you may not think initially have a human impact. RAC, that Emma has already mentioned, and Barry at the back will be talking about tomorrow, the concrete, for anyone that missed it, the announcement around schools at the end of August. You imagine the impact if your child's school has had to be closed at very short notice. The impact on the staff working in that school, being told that the building they have been in, the building that they have been educating children in, may not be safe. And the impact for those of us in the National Health Service who have had RAC for quite a while. And people then realising that some of our hospitals may not be as safe as they initially thought. There are other incidents, though. If you look at any incident recently, you will see a human impact. The current Israel-Gaza conflict, the protests, the community tensions and the community cohesion issues that may not seem like emergency planning. To a lot of you, you may think, well, that's a community safety problem. That's a different department. It all feeds in. And we look at all emergencies, not just those that take emergency planners and expect that we will respond. I will also add that for my LRFs, of which I am lucky or otherwise to have 3 in my patch, all 3 of them are having to look at the Israel-Gaza conflict through a different lens, through hate crime, through prevent, through target hardening surveys, through the protect element. We were told today that the protect duty was part of the King's speech. The impact of that on yourselves as humans and as emergency planners, making sure that our buildings are safe. We heard from Major General Hodgetts around citizen aid, and making sure that that's embedded, making sure that our communities are prepared, not scared. Because if we can prepare people, then they know that in an incident there are plans, there are planners, and they know what they need to do. And I will also add that we're approaching winter. So if you think about the emergencies we usually get in winter, it's probably going to snow. It's going to rain a lot. It is going to flood, which is a slight nightmare for me as I go to a local authority that floods every year. And I'm getting ready for those floods. We have surges within healthcare. We have pressures. We have the difficulty that most of our hospitals right now are full. The impact of that and the human aspects of that is something that all of you should be thinking about, whether you work in healthcare or not, because we will end up having to respond as planners, and people will expect that we will know what to do for those individuals that are in hospital but may not need to be there, or those individuals that are at home desperately need help and cannot receive it because our hospitals are full and ambulances that should be on the road are queuing outside. So think about your incidents, think about your events, think about the queue. If nothing else, we've just had the 1-year anniversary of Operation London Bridge with the death of Her late Majesty. The human aspects of having the largest and most organised queue in British history. The fact that we had a rebel queue to join a queue, the most British thing ever, and the fact that we had a queue with toilets and wristbands and food and drink options and first aid provision. You can't tell me that that wasn't human aspects of an event, that we were having to consider as planners how we look after the individuals that are wanting to pay their respects. I covered the Windsor area for health during London Bridge and during Golden Orb for the coronation concert. Most of our planning was about people. There were bits on about, well, what will happen if X happens? But a lot of the discussions were around people, around if something happens, how do we do it? How are we going to support people if things go wrong, if it rains, if for whatever reason we've had to divert the cortege? So think about your incident, think about your events, think about what you plan for, and think about where people need to be at the heart of your planning. There you go.
Thank you, Nathan. And we're now going to hear from Julie, who's going to talk about our 10 top human aspects principles.
There are some slides to go with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next. There we are. It worked for me. Must have got used to working by the end of the day, thank goodness. So, yes, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes, although I could take a good half an hour, a good couple of hours talking about our 10 key principles. Not easy to say when you've lost a tooth. I had a tooth out 2 weeks ago and I've left me with a lisp. So I do apologise if I get it muddled from time to time. I've already met you and spoken, and you've got my biog, so I won't spend any time going through that. I'll get straight on to what our human aspects are all about. The Civil Contingencies Act, which necessitates what we do and directs what we do and guides us and supports us, recognises and requires that people should be at the heart of emergency planning and response. So that's a given. We've already said and stressed and given examples of human aspects are all about people. We are all people in all guises. We may be survivors. We may be family and friends of those who are missing, injured, or dead. We might be witnesses. And I had a very personal experience of being a witness to a road traffic collision just a few weeks ago. The first one that I had been absolutely up close to. And I lost my voice for almost a week afterwards from the shock of seeing what I had. But I was stood with my husband waiting to tell the police what we've seen, and it was not nice. Once I'd given my statement, we were left standing on a Friday evening, 7:30 in the evening. I was shaking, and we were said, cheerio, we may phone you. And I was left to go home. I can't see a white van and I can't see a cyclist without having flashbacks to that. And that was just a small, thankfully non-fatal accident. So don't forget the witnesses. Displaced people, such as refugees, communities, and our responders. We're all people. And providing multi-agency, timely and appropriate humanitarian assistance can help people, I say recover, but I know Lucy will agree with me, and her book, The Recovery Myth, I've read before I had a personal experience of losing someone in COVID, and I absolutely get that 100% now. I won't use your word, Lucy, but I very much identify with that. Recovery means different things to different people. But we want to mitigate those longer term impacts. And if we help people right at the beginning in our planning, in our response, it can help with the way in which people learn to live after something has happened. So the background and intent in 2021, 2 years ago now, our group considered developing guidance for us, for everybody, for free, to raise awareness about the human aspects of major incidents and emergencies. And we surveyed group members and identified a top 10 key principles to guide, we say here plan, writing and review, but to guide us in so many different ways, and I'll go through them in a moment. And today we've heard examples of every single principle, which I will refer to because you brought it to life. We've developed learning and key issues around each principle. So for each one of the 10, and I won't go through them all now, we've got copies, and we will send you the link so that you can print off your own copies and look at these, to support us in our emergency. We've got a vision, we had a vision of creating an eye-catching, colourful, you see here, infographic to be used by yourselves in training to inform and promote the key principles. It did have pictures on it originally, but when I was asked where I got them from, it was 3 years ago and I couldn't remember. So we've got to look for new pictures to add to it, just to ensure that it's appropriate for everybody to actually use. And the sources weren't just our ideas. We actually also took into account major pieces of research and experience, and some of these were Responding to Disaster, the Human Aspects, which was written by the group before I joined, actually. Disaster Action, which I've already mentioned, and our Collective Conviction document book, which really does get to the heart of what we're doing. Professor Lucy Easthope, The Recovery Myth, and other publications, Lucy. I'm sure we'll share information on those throughout tomorrow. And Dr. Anne, Literature and Best Practice Review and Assessment. So we took those on board. We took our own thoughts and came up with the 10 key principles. So I hope you can see them here. I will put a bigger infographic up in a moment. I've had the privilege, and this is not my work, this is a collective piece of work, as I said, influenced by others who've experienced real first-hand emotions and first-hand loss. But I've had the privilege of actually sort of going out and testing the waters within Wales. I don't know if you can tell my Welsh accent with my lisp, but I'm a member of the Welsh branch of the EPS. And the first guinea pigs, if you like, I shared it with our Welsh branch back earlier this year and got some really good feedback. I then was asked to share with our North Wales local authority partners. Again, some of them are here with us today. And they are also looking at how they could be implemented and used within the Local Resilience Forum. And just a couple of weeks ago, Lucy was coming to do our Wales Gold, which is our equivalent of the Magic courses in South Wales Local Resilience Forum, and was unable to make it. So I filled that slot, Lucy, doing exactly the same with our strategic commanders, and was very encouraged to gather feedback from that and have the Assistant Chief Constable of South Wales come up to me to reassure me that in South Wales they're on the button they get Nana to come and do some work, and he was really keen. And thinking about, and just an anecdote from the comms that we heard from Andrea, he shared something very, very personal within that group in terms of the media messages that were put out with relation to an incident that he had to deal with. And he had the dilemma of reputation versus truth. It was very interesting, and he was very brave and honest to share that with the strategic coordinating group at the training event. So the messages are getting through. So I did come up with a mnemonic. I do lots of crosswords and Sudokus, and I do that Wordle thing every day, and I like words. So in order, because none of these principles is not in any order, okay? So we had to put them in some sort of shape. So I came up with a mnemonic of pave much hope, because I think that's what we're doing, is laying the path for much hope, and for the hope that we will get better and better in what we do in terms of our human aspects. And like I said, and I've been sitting taking notes throughout, because I do that, and there's so many things that have been said throughout today by every single presenter that I can link to these principles. I can link them back to the presentations. I mean, people-focused approach, that's been said by many people. And I think Amanda, in what she said with regard to information and keeping people at the centre of that information, knowing that's who you're getting the messages out, not what we want to tell them, what they need from us. Address responder welfare. Again, Major General Tim Hodgetts referred to OpSmart for the armed forces, and what is from the very onset of being employed and working in the armed services, that is what is for every single person who actually is in the armed services. And there are 85 touch points throughout. So excellent example of addressing that potential responder welfare. Visible, compassionate leadership. I'm going to add one in of my own here in terms of somebody that I is Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand Prime Minister. I followed her career. She was New Zealand Prime Minister when they had the Christchurch, the lone shooter, in a mosque where 51 people died. And if you look her up, those of you who haven't heard her before, she has been seen as a tremendous example of a strategic leader who acted with compassion and honesty. And she really does visualize and demonstrates to me what we're trying to achieve in terms of having that led from the top response. Then we've got embedding and addressing human aspects in integrated emergency management. So that's into everything we do. And integrated emergency management was a term coined back in the 1990s, I think, by the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agencies. It's been around longer than the Act. It's the principles that we must adhere to, preparation, assessment of preparation, and then our response, our recovery, and they are what the Civil Contingencies Act and the guidance actually recommend and want to be embedded. Multi-agency coordination, that's what it's about, is appreciating what our other organisations do or our other colleagues are expected to do. If we have an understanding of what's expected of them, our expectations will be reasonable, and they won't be. I think somebody said about the expectations on the local resilience forums in the exercise Mighty Oak. Huge expectations. Are they realistic? Do they really know what local resilience forums can and can't do, and the stresses and strains that they put under? Same principles for working with our colleagues across the patch in agencies, and events like today where we get to hear stories of what people are involved in is part of that building up that understanding of each other's roles. A conscious regard for people's rights and needs. And I think Nathan covered some of that in what he was talking about the current things that we're experiencing. Harness community resilience. And we had a lot this morning on the NCSR presentation from Andrew and Roseanne. And also Zonia and Paul, that harnessing of the community resilience and that making sure that we do things, completely with our communities and harness that and not expect us to tell them what they need, listen to what the community wants and the community needs and what they can bring to the party. That honesty, transparency and openness in communications. And again, I think Andrea said it all in terms of the communities and understanding what it's really like for people, building up that trust. My reference to the strategic commander from South Wales, he was faced with that honesty or the transparency, the honesty or the reputation. We need to get people's trust. Proactive and sustained outreach and support. So it's not something that and recovery is always referred to as we don't know how long it's going to be, how long long's a piece of string. You can't just take it away when maybe the resources run out. Manage people's expectations of what we can provide so that we're not disappointing people, or that we're there when it's all happening, but when the newspapers go, the headlines go, it's no longer media news, that we're still there, because there will be people who need us there. And this equitable approach is a bit of a hobby horse of mine in terms of an equitable approach to response and recovery. I've been in emergency planning for over 30 years, getting on for 40 years actually. And I can honestly say, I haven't done the maths properly, but just from my sort of feeling for what I've been involved in, I would say 75% response and 25% recovery in terms of exercising that we do. In terms of planning, probably about the same. It's got to be equitable. And again, I think it was Rupert mentioned in Jersey about people turning up and going through the ashes and sifting through the ashes. We must be thinking of what we can do right in terms of the response that will actually assist with that longer term recovery or getting used to life after rather than what it was before. You have to plan that as equally important. It has to take up 50-50. Okay? Don't make it all about the response. The recovery is more difficult, yes, because it's actually many more organisations involved in recovery than there is in response. And yet we spend a lot of time working through with our colleagues the response. But how many, just a show of hands, how many people have been in a recovery exercise of late? 1, 2, 3. How many people have been involved in response exercises? There we are. Need not say any more there. So these are principles that we want to embed in what we do, just like the Jessup principles, so that every step of the way, whether it's in preparation, whether it's in our response or in recovery, we need to be questioning ourselves as to, okay, what does this mean at this stage? What are we doing? What does this mean to us? What can I do personally? What can our organisation bring to the party? And it's really encouraging, as I say, through the presentations, to actually see working examples of that. So each one, as I said, is in the document, is followed up with a whole range of information to support that if you want to use them. And the pictogram can be used to explain the principles, to learn about them, to have and revise our understanding of them, and as an aid memoir. You can have an index to follow through in depth. And you can use it at any level. It can be used at operational, tactical, strategic. It can be used individually, organisationally. It's a checklist. And I went through the strategic coordination group, and they used that checklist. And it's actually available on an A4 in a little handy document that you can have. It's copyrighted to the Emergency Planning Society, but we're more than happy to encourage its use. And that's why I'm here today.